The 2005 East African Safari Classic Rally was held from the 1st to the 10th of December. This biannual event traces the roots of the Great East African Safari Rallies, which was first run in 1953 to commemorate the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II of England. The Safari Rally was one of the original World Rally Championship events and was its pearl in the crown until its eventual demise in 2002. The tranquil Indian Ocean at Kenya's beautiful Diani Beach, just south of Mombasa, enticed the competitors to the second running of this greatest of classic rallies. The event attracted 3 former world champions. Bjorn Waldegard, 4-time Safari Rally victor, in 1977, 84, 86 and 1990.
It feels great to be here again because it was 1971 I did my very first safari, and that was, I think it was the last time I went into Tanzania, and I did it in a Porsche, and now I'm back in a Porsche. It feels fantastic.
Stig Blomqvist, World Rally Champion in 1984 and still looking for his first Safari Rally win.
Don't think you can plan to go for outright win on this event because I've never been like that, because what you said, 9 days and a lot of things can happen, so it's like it was in the old days, because you could never tell who was going to win Safari because it could be anybody more or less.
Juha Kankkunen, Safari Rally Champion in 1985, 1991 and 1993.
I mean, we started discussing about this a year ago because it was going to be 20 years this year that won the rally first time. And Mike said that he has a brand new Datsun if you are interested to drive it. And I said, yeah, if you find me a sponsorship and everything, so I will come.
Other entries included 1994 Safari Rally winner Ian Duncan and Rob Collinge, the winner of the inaugural Classic Safari Rally held in 2003.
This is the best rallying in the world, bar none. And you know, although we come back here 30 years later, the roads are still the same, the crowds are still the same, the matatas are still the same. And that's why this has become such an important world event. And this is what rallying is really about, as far as I'm concerned. No helicopters, no trace cars, no pace cars, no people making notes for you for your tyres.
The first day of the event covered registration and scrutineering of the beautifully prepared pre-1975 rally cars. The cars had come from 18 different countries, as far afield as Australia and America. The preparation of the cars incorporated many special Safari Rally features. After scrutineering, the entrants took the ferry to the island city of Mombasa for the ceremonial start. The start took place under the famous elephant tusks, erected in commemoration of a visit to Mombasa by Princess Margaret of England. The cars were flagged off by the Lord Mayor of Mombasa, accompanied by Eric Cecil, affectionately known as Bwana Safari, the founder of the event more than 50 years ago. Before them lay 9 days of rallying and over 4,500 kilometers of the toughest terrain Africa could offer. Over 1,600 kilometers of the event would be competitive special stages. a true survival of the fittest event. The crowds along the route were greater than those seen even on modern-day World Rally Championship events. The first competitive day would take the cars around the coastal strip and along the foothills of the Usambara Mountains. It would be a fast and relatively smooth day with 5 competitive stages finishing in Dar-es Salaam. The competitors quickly moved into Tanzania, with the efficient border officials completing the formalities in less than 1 minute per car. Car number 1, the Datsun 260Z of Rob Collinge and Anton Levitan, led the way, though it was Alexander Hack, accompanied by local co-driver David Lawrence Brown, who set the fastest time on this short 31-kilometre section. Unfortunately, they were to crash out on the second 67-kilometre stage, planting their Ford Escort next to the once beautiful Porsche 911 of Andrew Barnes and Calvin Cooley, which had also met a similar fate.
We came over the brow, the car gets light, and we managed to make it sideways then, and we were going sideways, and then it comes over the island,
and it flips off, the camera goes up,
and then it flips, and it was like, ooh, and then immediately we rode.
Frederick Dorr was competing in his first event since the 2003 Classic Safari. Stig Blomqvist and Anna Goni moved up into first place with their historic motorsport Ford Escort. Bjorn Waldegard, with David Kavanagh in the co-driver's seat, passes his ex-Toyota Team Europe protege Juha Kankkunen. Juha's Datsun 240Z was suffering from fuel pump problems. The rally and the extreme heat was already taking its toll. Ian Duncan was stopped in the other historic motorsport Escort due to electrical problems. Service had to be taken at the side of the road for both the cars and their crews.
But was completely too much full.
There's bumps obviously, but not as, I think it's living up to its speculation that these were the 2 smoother days, huh?
One of the stars of the 2003 event, Gerard Marcy from Belgium, accompanied this year by Alain Lopez of Paris-Dakar fame, was setting a scorching pace. The 2 large Ford V8s of the ever-cheerful Richard Martin Hurst and Tony Devantier in their Capri Piranha, and husband and wife team of Paul and Mary Kane in their beautiful Mustang, were really setting the roads alight. The first day of 600 kilometers finished in Dar-es Salaam, the commercial capital of Tanzania. Service was undertaken in the car park of the newly opened Hotel Kilimanjaro, Kapinski. Australians Graham Alexander and David Stewart in their Datsun 260Z were already well placed in 5th position.
Had a trouble-free run all day. No major problems, so no, humming along. The only problem we had, we caught a couple of cars, it was very difficult to pass in the dust.
We had a puncture in stage 2, which was a nuisance. Apart from that, no problem. First car on the road is a bit hairy.
It was great. The roads are nice and smooth with a lot of jumps on it. So we were making up ground on the cars in front of us. But after the 3rd section, we started having problems.
Day 3 would take the cruise northeast towards Arusha, passing through the Usambara and Pare mountains, and then finishing in the shadows of Mount Kilimanjaro. Day 3 commenced with 2 competitive sections totaling 120 kilometers and saw the first casualty of the day.
Well, we were just driving down the straight, not driving too fast, and I think the rear end just tried to control the car. Just went off the road and rolled once. That was that.
After some further roadside service, the competitors found themselves in the foothills of the fabled Usambara Mountains. one of the Safari Rally Classic stages. A 72-kilometer climb and descent of never-ending bends. Stig was still leading the event with his BDA-powered escort echoing off the side of the hills. The Mark I escort made history in the Safari Rally of 1972, when Hannu Mikkola became the first overseas rally driver to win the event. Rob Collinge was working hard and took back 2 minutes from the leader Stig Blomqvist, despite fighting a troublesome gearbox. Ian Duncan and Amar Slach were really flying and put up the fastest time of 64 minutes and 20 seconds. Ten Porsche 911s started the event, making it the most popular model with the ever-present Ford Escorts. The mighty Rover 3.5 of James Ingleby and Mike Bowen was making its second appearance in the event, having finished 19th in 2003 with Richard Martin Hurst at the helm. Some people took time to view the tea plantations. Ian Duncan started the Makenya stage in the Pare Mountain, but his rally was to finish some 22 kilometers later, nosediving and flipping over into an unsighted drift. The crew were thankfully unhurt, and the local mutt was totally unimpressed by it all.
Yeah, the day was good. Today we have stage in the mountain that I like very much. Unfortunately, I have broken a shock absorber in this stage, but the time was not too bad because I'm in third position now.
I mean, the Usambaras are absolutely fantastic. Sadly, we caught a car which either didn't see us or didn't get out of our way, so we lost a bit of time on it. But it really is a very, very incredible stage.
Car's running well. We had tightened one nut last night, and one of the sensors for the wheel speed probably got knocked this evening, so we had to put that right. Apart from that, it's fine. Put new tyres on a couple of times on the rear.
The route would now travel north and back into Kenya. The landscape would be dry, flat plains and include 4 competitive stages. Nairobi would be their goal. Stig's lead was to be short-lived as the competitors entered the 62-kilometer Sanyuju Longido section. Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa, presented a dramatic skyline. Escort number 9 of Ian Freestone and Preston Ayres was competing in its second classic and performing well. Old Safari hands Jürgen Bertel and Jerry Kotak, in their beautifully prepared Porsche 911, were settling in well and were now up to 10th position. The stage was a typical safari cocktail of mud and dust. The route brought navigational problems of its own and appeared to be more like the Paris-Dakar. The problem? An elusive river crossing. Stig and Anna lost 19 minutes with a broken rim and a malfunctioning jack. They still found time to help Graham Alexander out of the dust. Roddy Sachs, with new boy Clive Gardner, was back from South Africa for his second attempt at the Classic Safari. After a fine start, he was unfortunately not to finish the third day. Bo Axelson, with Jürgen Darmstadt, was driving in his usual exuberant style and was assisting the Forestry Commission with their tree felling exercise. The dust was beginning to take its toll. Belgium Albert Michels and Patrick de Koning in Porsche number 28 were suffering with engine problems. The local crew of Bob Kawugi and William Mburu in their Datsun 1600 SSS were running well and creating a dust storm of their own. The rally moved back into Kenya through the Namanga border post, where slick efficiency of the officials resulted in the minimum of delays. The next competitive of over 150 kilometers took the competitors east towards Amboseli, another great Kenyan game reserve. Rob Collinge had now taken over the leading position, both on the road and in time elapsed. Gerard Marcy was now up to second place. Juha Kankkunen, having overcome his technical problems, was now really motoring in classic style. He put up joint fastest time with Stig Blomqvist. Old hands never lose their touch. Anthony Ward was keeping out of trouble in his Escort number 15. Marzio Kravos and Renzo Bernardi in their thundering Mercedes 450 SLC were now second fastest of the local contingent and were fighting for a top 10 position. The day finished with the DT Dobie sponsored 8-kilometer spectator special stage at Athi River. John Lloyd and Paul Amandini in their Tuttle prepared Porsche 911 tested the suspension to its utmost. The result was a fine third place overall. Over 6,000 spectators bared the heat to watch the beautiful classic cars perform. It could have been back in the 70s. Frederick Dorr and Paul Howarth were now up to 5th position. In service at the Panari Hotel in Nairobi, Rob Collinge had to straighten out his bush bar after striking an errant antelope. The route left Nairobi and would travel northeast and cross the Great Rift Valley at Elementaita. After a steep climb up the Mao Escarpment, the rally would then cross the dusty Olorai Plains and enter the famous Masai Mara Game Reserve. 4 competitive stages were to be tackled. The first competitive stage of the day was run on the estate and ancestral home of Lord and Lady Delamere, some 100 kilometers northwest of Nairobi. It comprised of a 54-kilometer dash traversing the floor of the Great Rift Valley. Rob and Anton set the fastest time of just over 36 minutes through the ranch land, which was teeming with game. Aslam Khan, with his nephew Imran, was still running in their Datsun 180B. All was not plain sailing though. Engine fires and fine volcanic dust were causing havoc. The Opel Manta of Gunther Kronseder was deep in trouble. On the fast Malelo to Malot stage, Gerard Marcy was still holding on to a strong second place, with John Lloyd continuing to hold third position. Stig Blomqvist was making up ground fast, with the fastest time on this stage, covering the 52 kilometers in just 22 minutes. Simon Sharpe and Dennis Burnett, in their €1,000 BMW 2002, were continuing an untroubled run. The rally route then moved into the dusty Olarai section, heading towards the world-famous Masai Mara Game Reserve. Frederick Dorr was now down to fourth position, having been passed by teammate John Lloyd. The two Juhas, Kankkunen and Repo, were on fine form, setting the fastest time. Bjorn Waldegard had his ex-London to Sydney Porsche well wound up and was back up to 8th place after numerous niggling problems. Old Safari stalwarts Janti Shah and Lofty Drews in their Datsun 180B lead in the Kaya brothers from Denmark. Their Porsche 911 was raising awareness for the United Nations Millennium Development Goals project. The shimmering heat of the African plains put pressure on all the crews, who had been advised by the event doctor to drink at least 8 liters of water per day. Even so, many suffered from dehydration. The day finished at the Sekenani Primary School, which was one of the many schools on the route which benefited from the safari rally. In this case, it was a new food store, new classroom furniture, and a fence to keep the wild animals out. The next day would be given over to service, and hopefully some time for game viewing. No 5 o'clock alarm clock for the 5th day, though some major work was called for. The opportunity to take unique hot air balloon safaris was an occasion not to be missed. Competitors and their service crews set about some major work, and some imaginative skills were on display. True heroes of the event were Joseph Pottinger and Peter Hall, who were doing all their own service throughout the event.
The roads in the outback of Australia are very similar to this. It's a bit of a challenge, someone to look at, you need to be able to drive reasonably quickly, have a bit of empathy for the car, a bit of mechanical empathy, and I think we're a bit of Australian ingenuity, and it's all hanging together.
Yesterday we had a whole bunch of problems. We had our front left suspension fail totally, so we had to do the last 20 kilometers of a special stage without any front left suspension. Then we had the strut come loose, then we had the steering come loose, so we were able to come in here with steering that was at the very end of its possibilities.
It feels very much like I was here in my young days, when the teams wasn't so big, you had to help to work and you had to help to service. And then in the middle of my career, we had enormous big teams, the driver just had a shower and you went down to see what they were doing. And now I'm back to square one again, I have to help. This a new team came here, and to win a safari there are no shortcuts. You have to learn it from the very beginning, I know.
The tar truck was kept busy, with the hard rocky roads causing many punctures and attrition.
I thought we were out of it, but we took the car back to Dar, worked on it for a few hours, drove all the way back to Arusha throughout the night and joined the rally Wednesday morning.
The local valley service assured that all was spick and span for the following day.
On the back of this, I presume this is how classic rally is supposed to be done.
We missed the day before yesterday. We did all of yesterday, and then we hit a rock on the final stage, and then we sort of shows the front into the fan.
Yesterday was a bit of a harrowing time. We ended up on our roof, unfortunately. No injuries, and we managed to right the car by ourselves and get back on the road.
Bo Axelson found time for another engine rebuild.
Where's the hole?
4 days.
Even Juha Kankkunen had to get his hands dirty. And this was only the halfway point on this mammoth event. Day 7 would take the rally north, across the Great Rift Valley, through the Kerio Valley and up into the Kenyan highlands, to finish in the wheat farming country near Eldoret. A 5:30 start for the first cars meant that the control officers were working by lantern light. Electricity is not a common commodity in the Mara. The beautiful African sunrise gave little indication of the rough nature of the roads to follow. The first 80-kilometre competitive of the day finished at Mausch, high on the Mao escarpment, the rally running at well over 2,500 metres. Unfortunately, this section also saw the retirement of Juha Kankkunen, when his co-driver, Juha Repo, fell ill. Collinge continued to be chased by Gerard Massey. The rover of Ingleby and Bowen was eating its way through shock absorbers. Local competitors Marzio Kravos and Simon Sharpe were engrossed in their own private battle. After a short rest halt at the Rift Valley Motorsports Club, the rally route descended into the hot and harsh Kerio Valley. Frederick Dorr, having rolled in the previous Elementator stage, continued at an unabated speed to record the fastest time on the Kiptagich to Muscut section. The leaders were all closely bunched, with Gerard Marcy recording the second fastest time and closing the gap on Collinge. Collinge was battling with gearbox problems, which would see him losing third gear. Stig Blomqvist was now back up to third place, having passed John Lloyd earlier in the day. Bjorn had now slipped back one place to 9th position. Jürgen Bertel's lack of rear brakes did not appear to be diminishing his speed. Father and son team of Jonathan and Quentin Savage were continuing to make steady progress and were aiming for a top 10 finish in their still immaculate Datsun 260Z. John Hills with Michael Tuckey in their escort from Australia were recovering well after their earlier problems, but appeared to have their eyes on a piece of prime fillet. The rally route crossed the equator, and the immaculate tented camp on the Detroit farm near Eldoret brought day 6 to a close. The local primary school was again to benefit from the rally's visit. This time the school was totally re-roofed, new floors were laid, and the buildings were given a coat of paint. New sports equipment was also donated. Despite the previous full day of service, some major rework was still found to be necessary.
There was a mistake. I was a bit over-optimistic on one knot, and I know it was a curve on a crest, and I have an hesitation, and the car starts sliding, and we roll slowly in the ditch, and we fall back on the wheels, and we restart immediately. We don't lose too much time.
Collinge benefited from a new gearbox, kindly lent to him by a fellow competitor. Day 8 started with a northerly loop through the Charangani Mountains, and then the steep descent down Floorspar. It was mainly an easterly trek, finishing up in the ranching country of the Laikipia Plains, Mount Kenya being the final destination. Another early start brought mixed emotions. Mark Davey appreciated the sunrise.
Oh yeah, have you seen the sunrise? Oh.
Lofty Drews found it all a bit too fresh. The rally went straight into the Charangani Hills, which the competitors were pleased to find in a reasonably dry condition. Rain in the Charanganis has changed many a safari rally leaderboard. The route then descended the famous Floorspar escarpment, where Anthony Ward made a spectacular descent through the endless hairpin bends. Under the supervision of Jim Heather Hayes, Rob Collinge took a quick roadside service before proceeding to Lake Bogoria. All was not so smooth for the Kravos Bernardi 450 SLC. A rear cross member had broken, and the change was undertaken in not ideal conditions.
Yeah, it's going good. No problem. It's typical safari, I think.
Yeah, your Cherangani time was superb.
Yeah, it's okay. We are a bit disappointed because we like very much the first stage, which is very nice for the driver and was not too rough. But Stig was really incredible fast because he was still 1 minute faster than us.
Okay, bit of a rest. I'm not sure I wanted it or not, but raring to go now.
After a short break at the Lake Pagoria Lodge, the rally continued in the afternoon, with 2 adjacent competitive stages totaling some 140 kilometers. Marcy started the stage of a vengeance, still determined to catch the rally leader Rob Collinge.
Basically, the aim is just to have good fun and see if we can get it to the end.
It's been very good so far. Yeah, it's just the driver that's the problem.
The stage included a steep climb up an escarpment to the Laikipia Plains and Rumaruti. Gerard Marcy hit overheating problems climbing the escarpment and was by then only a few kilometers away from where his 2003 rally had finished prematurely. After further electrical problems in the next stage, Marcy lost nearly 4 hours to the leaders and slumped back to 16th place overall. Stig was motoring hard and was trying to grab the maximum benefit from Marcy's misfortune. With the 5,200-meter high peak of Mount Kenya in view, the competitors entered the luxury domain of the Mount Kenya Safari Club and a well-earned rest. 3,447 kilometers completed and only another 1,049 to go. Stig eyed up the competition, whilst Bjorn mulled over another interesting day. He commented on the beautiful mountains, the rough but fast roads, the lack of rear brakes and continued suspension problems, but summed it up as just another day in the office. Day 9 was to be a long haul south. The route passed through the hilly and fertile areas around Nyeri and Thika, and then passed by Nairobi to join up onto the main Mombasa road. The night stop was to be at Voi. The first car was away at 6:30, with the rest of the field following at 2-minute intervals. Uwe Kurzenberger was attacking his first cigar of the day, maybe not to Gabriel's approval. The long haul down to Voi included the 114-kilometer Uru to Imali section, which covered typical African bush country. The escorts of Marcy and Stig were flying, but were unable to prevent Rob Collinge from again setting a fastest time and extending his lead even further. And this was with a rough-sounding 5-cylinder 240Z. More work for the boys this evening. The Savages were becoming more competitive by the day and were now up to 10th position. This was son Quentin's first rally, true baptism by far. The self-service team of Poitinger and Hall were still motoring and heading for a 20th place finish. Bjorn finished the stage with a detached steering column, which kept David Kavanagh's full attention. The rover required attention due to a broken anti-roll bar. The route then followed the main tarmac road through the Savo game parks, where wildlife was in abundance. Savo has a land area greater than that of Wales or even Belgium, and is the home of over 13,000 elephants, a truly great animal kingdom. The Voi Lodge Service Park gave the competitors and their service crews a final chance to fettle their cars for the following day's run back to the Indian Ocean and the finish at Diani Beach. Marzio and Renzo had to check out the rear end of their Merc after a heavy landing. Collinge's 260Z had been running on 5 cylinders due to an errant valve. The valve required wiring up to prevent catastrophic damage.
For keeping a valve in place.
All tired car.
You got about 3 or 4 mil in that clutch, is that right?
It has been another day of struggle, and just 4 kilometers before the control at Voi we broke the bull joint in the front suspension, and we put it together with some wire and tire up, and it was not possible to drive it forward and it fall out again, but reverse it was okay, so it was 4 kilometers in reverse.
The last day was relatively short, though still included 170 kilometers of stages, and the high temperatures and humidity would bring extra strain on the crews. The final day started with a sting, 2 stages, up and down the notorious tighter hills, a twisty string of hairpins on narrow roads. It may have only been 350 kilometers to the finish, but 50% of them were still flat-out competitive stages. Collinge continued to lead in majestic style. Stig was still right up there, despite breaking his steering rack. John Lloyd, in his sweetly running Tuttle Porsche, was keeping his fingers crossed. It was at this stage of the rally in 2003 that he exploded out of the event in a bull of fire. The 2 local entries of Savage and Sharpe rounded off the top 10. David Kedwood and Crispin Sassoon in escort number 16 had a final day full of dramas. dropping them down from 12th to 16th position. The Rukanga stage started through the beautifully manicured sisal plantations, before returning back past the Kasingao mountain and into elephant country again. Despite major engine problems, the Kaya brothers were still motoring at competitive speeds. Their goal was to get back to Mombasa. James Ingleby brought the Rover back for the second year running in a fine 14th position. The competition was still unbelievably tight, and in the final 50-kilometre Zamburu to Kanango stage, only seconds separated Ian Freestone, Graham Alexander and Bjorn Waldegard. Graham Alexander took a minute off Freestone and beat him to 5th place by only 21 seconds. And that was after 4,500 kilometers of rallying and over 1,600 kilometers of competitive special stages. Bjorn was only a further 28 seconds behind. Tragedy struck Simon Glover when he destroyed the front end of his Escort on an unseen drift. Co-driver Russ Langthorne managed to get it all together again, though unfortunately some 2 hours were lost. A safe 8th position was lost, and their final classification was to be 21st. Timothy Mammon and Jaspel Matharu could smell the Indian Ocean. The finish to this truly amazing event saw the battle-scarred survivors mounting the finishing ramp on the white sands of Diani Beach. First overall were Rob Collinge and Anton Levitan in their self-prepared Datsun 260Z.
You know, to win a safari once is an achievement, to win it a second time is luck.
Second overall were Stig Blomqvist and Anna Goni in their historic motorsport Ford Escort. Third overall were Frederick Dorr and Paul Howarth in their Tuttle-prepared Porsche 911. Bjorn Waldegard and David Kavanagh finished 7th overall and received the Henry Liddon Memorial Trophy for their never say die spirit to the event. Simon Sharpe and Dennis Burnett concluded the top 10 and won the Jerry Phillips Memorial Trophy for showing true safari spirit throughout the event.
The safari is steeped in tradition. It's the toughest event in the world. You know, I'm privileged to have been able to have the opportunity to compete in the event.
And during my 25 years as a professional rally driver, each second day you ask yourself, what the hell are you doing? And then the next minute you just remember how fantastic your life is and how fantastic rally life is. And I must say these 10 days has possibly given me so much, so I feel at least younger.
I think it's still the greatest rally on earth, without doubt.
The 2005 East African Safari Classic Rally had truly reflected the speed, toughness and endurance of its hallowed forebearers.
it.